Welcome and thank you for joining us on today's edition of the Constitution, coming to you on the platform of the International Center for Trade for Tax Research and Development. We'll be right back in a minute after this break, but thanking you so very much for joining us on this very special edition after this time out. I'm Obafemi Craig, thanking you for being there with us. No love is all we In a democratic nation as ours, the supremacy of the Constitution is not only fundamental, but legitimately too a legal document from which every institution derives its validity and legality of rights and powers. In the understanding and the recognition of the relevance, the place, and importance of the Constitution, any law or action that is inconsistent or incompatible with the provisions so contained in the Constitution as provided for by law can be so described or said to be null, void, and of no effect. In the words of Thomas Jefferson, a founding father of America who was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence and later served as the third president of the United States of America, he said, "The two enemies of the people in a democratic nation are the criminals and the government. So let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution, so the second will not become the legalized version of the first, which by implication directly states the supremacy, the legitimacy and fundamental place of the Constitution as supreme in a democracy. If these then be so, a violation of the Constitution in whatever form can be so described as a breach of the rule of law, or at worst, a violation of democratic institutions. To Nigerians, the recent signing of the Executive Order 007 of 2019 on Road Infrastructure Development and Refurbishment Investment Tax Credit Scheme Order by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2019 in exercise of the powers conferred by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in accordance with Section 23 subsection 2 of the Companies Income Tax Act has been generating a lot of controversies as to the legality or otherwise of the order. While it seems to be good on the part of the government as a way of opening up opportunities for private sector to join in road construction, most of the issues so raised in the order, according to another school of thought, must have legislative backing. They are of the view that if it is not done when businesses are to claim benefits arising therefrom the order, they will find out that they cannot claim the benefits as stated because the order lacked legislative backing, since executive order is only to allow the executive to work within its scope and not outside it. Where then lies the place and the relevance of the order? Constitutionally, the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Commission is said to be best placed to allocate resources for such national projects as stated in the Executive Order 007. To Nigerians, therefore, it will be a violation of the Constitution if the states do not agree that their share of revenue should be used in such manner. More so that the use of tax revenue to fund road infrastructure and refurbishment will deprive states of their share of revenue allocation. These and more forms the crux of the discourse on today's edition of the Constitution. No love is all we need. Welcome back, and it's good to have you join us again. I'm still on the Constitution, coming to you on the platform of the International Center for Tax Research and Development. For today, we'll be taking a look at the violation of the Constitution, and of course, we'll also be looking at corruption, as it were, and taking a critical look at the role of INEC and responsibility against the forthcoming 2019 elections. To discuss this discuss here with me, I have seated on my left, she is also a very regular face on the show, like you all know too very well. She is a senior advocate of Nigeria. She's Titi Lola Akinlawo. She's of the Akinlawo and Ojomo solicitors, barristers, and notaries. It's a great honor to have you again, Ma. Join us on this discourse for today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Craig.
And on my right, I have here are seated from the civil society organization in their respective capacity as comrades who have been in the vanguard of so many issues of concern as it affects the socio-economic and political growth of the Nigerian state. They've been in the vanguard, in the forefront, advocating different issues of policy, of government programs, actions for the betterment of the good people of this country. Seated close to me is Mr. Nelson Ekujumi, a good governance advocate and human rights activist. Presently, he's the executive director, Committee for the Protection of People's Mandate. It's a great honor to have you, John.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
And at the extreme of him is Comrade Shino Loremika. He is the foundation member, Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, formed 30 years ago. And presently, he is leading the Zero Corruption Coalition of as the Southwest coordinator of this coalition. And presently, he is a campaigner against impunity in Nigeria, and is, of course, with focus on good governance again in this country. A great honor too, sir, to have you come for this discourse.
Profoundly delighted to be with you.
Let's start with the senior advocate of Nigeria to take a critical look at the perspective of a violation of the Constitution. How do we look at this time against the background of our present situation in the country?
Well, the one that is most recent of the violation of the Constitution by the executive will be the alleged suspension of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Well, the president said he relied on the court order granted by the CCB or CC Code of Conduct Tribunal. But taking a critical look at that order, it says the Honorable CJN should step aside, then the president should swear in the next
in
hierarchy. So it's order 1 is conditional. The order 2 is conditional on order 1 being applied by the CJN. But the order was not served on the CJN for him to even have a pleasure of deciding whether to obey or not to obey. But if he fails to step aside, there is really no vacuum with which the next person can come into office. But be that as it may, the provisions of Section 292 of the Constitution says the only way the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the President of the Court of Appeal, and the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court can be removed will be by an order, is it really an order? The President making a case to the Senate, and the Senate with 2/3 majority move that those offices should be declared vacant. They should remove the incumbent. That is the only way the Chief Justice of Nigeria could validly be removed. Whether by suspension, there is no provision for suspension in the Constitution. And even the so-called court order did not even make provision did not make any such order. So really, that is a number one clear violation of the Constitution. The president has usurped the powers of the legislative arm of government, the Senate, to be able to do that. Then, the most recent violation of the Constitution, which I consider very like the executive taking on the legislative powers of the National Assembly, will be the Executive Orders 6 and 7. Executive Order 6 says taking money from excess crude oil accounts to buy aircraft. And Executive Order 7, creating tax, whatever, what is it called now? The CITA, Road Infrastructure Scheme Executive Order. It's like a violation of the legislative power of the National Assembly to amend CITA, that is the Company Income Tax Act. Because what this has done, in effect, is to say that you take the company, the designated companies, or they call them participants, would use their money to construct roads. It's a long committee, a very huge committee, so many government officials.
Procedures that must be
followed.
Complied
but
with.
The bottom line is that the companies will use their money to construct roads or repair roads and what have you. And then government will give them tax credit, which they would use to offset the payment of their taxes. So in effect, amending the Company Income Tax Act, which power is actually meant for the legislature. They just went round it by saying executive order. So that's a clear violation. But most importantly, the executive has failed to comply with the Constitution by not obeying court's order. That's you know, in a democracy, everybody has the freedom of movement. And if the courts made orders that this person should be released, well, it behoves on the executive to obey. But we've had like 4 or 5 court orders saying that Dasuki should be released on bail. El Zazaki, the same thing. And yet here we are, they're still being held in detention despite these court orders. So clearly, these areas of violations, they're so germane, they're so very material that we cannot shy away from looking at them.
Gentlemen, you are the civil society organization and you represent a different aspect of this discourse. But I mean, what I mean, you represent that ground of your vision and your focus. What should be your own reaction? Because you're even supposed to be responding to all of these questions here today, and we to be asking you. What's your take on this, looking at what has been said in terms of the violation of constitutional provisions in this regard?
Well, thank you very much. I think when we are talking about violations of constitutional provisions, the only authority that can assert that violation is the courts. Whatever we say here or at any other fora are mere opinions. So one will expect that, you know, these violations, wherever they are found or wherever we suspect that they might have occurred, because whatever we are saying now is still mere allegations that look, from my reading or from my understanding of the Constitution, this is a violation of the law. But that violation can only be emphasized or can only be stated implicit by law when a court makes a pronouncement. That is for the first issue about the CGN that the Honorable San referred to. Then secondly, she referred to the sitter. With regards to the sitter, I think the responsibility there, as a civil society person, I need to be guided that what the executive has done in that aspect amounts to, you know, to rewriting what the constitutional provisions are, because I recognize that from the provisions of the Executive Order 6 that she mentioned, that the executive said if a company, a participant,
That's a 7.
is that 7?
That's 7.
Construct a road, that such an organization will be giving tax credits. I think we need to ask, that tax credit, is it that the tax will be stated holistically, that for year 2018 just ended, your tax is XY amount. You have constructed a road for 30 billion. And since your tax is 25 billion for this year, is the government saying you are no longer going to pay that 25 billion, or that 25 billion tax that is due to the state will now be, you know, written off as a debt owed you, meaning that you still have about 5 billion naira outstanding. Maybe that one will be carried over to the next year. I think we need to be guided about that. Then talking about the third one, which is about the court orders with regards to violation of court orders with regards to the continued detention of El Zazaki or Sambo Dasuki. Yes, I think why the Constitution stipulates that, you know, the executive, the judiciary interprets the law. Also, I'm conscious of the fact that the Constitution also makes it very clear. I've read some provisions of the Constitution where it says where there's a conflict between the rule of law and national interest, that national interest overrides the rule of law. For example, if you have a piece of land now, it's your private property. But under national interest or under public interest, the state can acquire that property. That means, that is to tell you the supremacy of the public interest or national interest over your individual rights. So the state can acquire your property, then give you compensation, but no matter the compensation you are giving, that compensation cannot suffice for the value of that property where you are presently domiciled. Also,
but sorry, sir, if I may come in there.
Okay, ma'am.
The example you have given
Yeah.
does not come close to the issue of a court order. The Constitution,
Yes.
the Constitution made provisions that judicial powers shall rest in the courts.
Yes.
And the courts have made an order that this person should be released.
Yes.
It is who is going to determine national interest? If the executive has believed that national interest is at play here,
Yes.
that is the fact they will put before
the court. Yes.
And the court will have to put that into consideration in determining whether the person should be released or not. In this particular case, they've gone to court, they've
Yes.
argued it,
Yes.
and the court still found that this person should be released on bail. So why would the executive not comply with the court order?
Under the issue of national interest versus individual rights, which the courts has tried to affirm,
Yes.
the same constitution makes it very clear there that where both conflicts, and that is part of the lacuna in the Nigerian constitution.
No, I disagree
it's
with
a lacuna, ma.
I disagree with you completely. The judiciary
Yes.
is supposed to be the arbiter
Yes.
between the person concerned and the executive.
state, yes.
It's the executive that is exercising its power.
Powers.
It is the executive that believes that if I release this person, it's going to conflict with national
Interest, yes.
Now, both of you will go before
The court.
an independent arbiter to decide, and the court had decided that there is no case here for national interest. And don't forget that even the ECOWAS courts had
Yes.
pronounced on Dasuki.
Yes,
that
the
Dasuki
ECOWAS
should
court
be released.
pronouncement is not binding on
No,
Nigeria,
no,
ma.
but we signed the treaty.
Yeah, we signed a treaty, but you know, their pronouncement is just.
I agree with you.
It's not legally enforceable.
It is
Okay,
not.
can we just allow Mr. Comrade Shimon Lumurikon or Loremikon to also add his voice to this?
Oh, thank you very much. Comrade Nelson has been my friend for decades. On this issue, I regret to say I align with what the senior advocate has said. National interests and personal liberty. Thomas Hobbes, Jim Bodine, Rousseau have philosophized on that long ago. The liberty of a citizen is paramount. When the government of Shagari deported a Nigerian, the UPN that was in opposition, Shugaba, they went to court, and we got a landmark judgment that the liberty of the citizen is number one. Return Shugaba to base. And we are saying, what we are witnessing this era is not just rape, it's gang raping. The executive, the legislator, the judiciary at different times have been gang raping the Nigerian constitution. Of recent, we often hear of consequency allowances. What is the business of legislators with capital projects? That is the business of the executive. In the Constitution, we have a provision that all appointments should be done with respect and promotion of federal character. We excuse the beautiful, honorable Minister of Finance for certain short-changing conduct. We replace that with somebody outside as geopolitical zone. The director of SSS detained a journalist for almost 2 years. People cried. The court says, go and release him. The executive recalled the director of SSS, replaced it with somebody else, and finally gave the appointment to somebody else outside the geopolitical zone of the man who acted. We did not respect the principle of federal character.
No, certainly not.
And I'm saying, if we are really committed to the ECOWAS Treaty, It helped us a lot. I know of international organizations like Freedom House, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch Africa, even the American Embassy. They document violation of rights on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, and publish annual report. It's a minus for us when we are seen as a country nakedly violating human rights. In the community of nations, will not be respected.
Certainly not.
It's a big minus for us.
You want to react to that? I can see you're trying to.
No, like I said earlier on, whatever we're saying here, we are only preferring our opinions.
Sorry,
But-
maybe
no,
Nessie
hold on,
should help me
hold
to
on.
take care of this too.
Let
Remember
me just quickly make-
that Dasuki and Zaki was arrested for many months. The state has all information on him, how he eats, how he drinks, how he urinates. That was never exhibited in court. Then when they now got judgment that is being released, they now say national question and national interest. Where was the evidence of national interest? The first month, 1 year, when he was arrested.
What I'm saying in effect here is that, I think it's, if I have a copy of the Constitution,
I have a copy.
Okay.
Okay, there's a copy of the Constitution
There's a
here.
copy of the
It's
Constitution.
there.
it states, I think, 14.
I'll be surprised if you can cite it.
I will.
I'll be shocked.
Where but you
Well,
can see the points, you know.
it asserts, because even
So
the
let's
courts, when the courts are making their pronouncements, it must be in consonance with the provisions of the Constitution, because the Constitution is the Bible of Nigeria.
yes.
And I'm also saying here clearly that I've read the Constitution. There's a section in the Constitution that states that where individual rights. I've just given you an illustration.
No, you see, nobody is
I've
disproving
just given
that.
an illustration.
The
Yeah.
illustration which you have given,
Yeah.
it's not in consonance with denying a citizen the freedom when the court, that was why I explained it, the court has an arbiter,
Yes.
had looked at the
facts.
the
Yes.
state's
Exhibited
interest,
points.
Yes.
had considered the individual interest
yes.
and decide that in this circumstance, I cannot say how national interest will come into play here. You see, it's a different thing from you want to take over my land. We're talking about two different things.
Liberty
No,
of
the right to life and the right to land are both private property.
They
No,
are.
they are not.
They are both private
Right
rights.
to life is not private.
Your right to land is your private right.
It's not
If I
your-
bought a land, it becomes my private property and not yours.
But
But you just what I'm saying here is that the Constitution itself, section 49,
It's not there.
is there.
You have it in
Yeah, I
mind.
have
that
it.
should
Let's
be-
just move
Just-
on. That will
okay,
take
the
enough
same
time because
Constitution
of
makes
time
it
to-
very clear that where there is national interest, and like you have
we
said,
agree, we
the
agree.
national interest we are talking about, man,
Yes.
the national interest we are talking about is not something that could be stated explicitly before a court of law.
No, you
Because
are.
hold on, man, even the judge might not have the technical competence. That is why, hold on, man, that is why in some cases, in some technical cases, for example, the paternity of a child, can a judge just sit down and determine without the input of experts on the medical
No,
field?
of course.
That is what I'm telling you.
No, but
It's
when you
different
talk
from
about
personal liberty.
personal
It's-
liberty,
we are talking about liberty.
We're talking-
And what I'm telling you is that when personal liberty conflicts with national, the question we should be asking now, ma, is that who determines
That is-
what constitutes national interest?
that is what I'm saying.
me
It
help
is
you.
the
There is no
executive.
Look
at
it is the
Chapter 2.
executive
Chapter
that will
2,
say that
fundamental human rights.
if this
Nigeria
person,
should be apologizing to Zanzaki
if you
for
release
detaining
this
him
person,
unlawfully
exactly,
and
it will
paying
be,
compensation.
if you detain somebody
No authority.
unlawfully, if you detain somebody on the basis of national interest,
Yes.
you have done so. You have decided your own.
Yes.
Now the person will go to court and say, "Court, please,
Enforcement of his rights.
look at me. I've
So
been locked
what
up."
now
Then
constitutes
you,
National interest.
you
Who
would
determines-
now
Let's
be the
regard-
one.
What determines national
That is
interest?
what I'm saying.
It's not the executive.
The
It's the executive.
No, that
It
is
has-
why
it
you
can
are
be
submitting
checkmated.
to the
Who-
courts.
The highest authority in Nigeria is the court.
You cannot be
The
a
courts-
judge in your own
the-
court.
the court may
there's
even
no
be
doubt
You
about
cannot
that.
be a
And
judge.
the
You
court
cannot
has
sit
said,
Yes,
there.
I agree.
release
I agree that there's no doubt about you being a judge. In
You
your own
cannot
case.
be.
But what we are saying that in this case, under the Constitution, the right to determine what constitutes national interest is what we should be asking.
That is what
the court cannot determine it on its own.
No, the executive
Yes.
that believes that to release this person
Yes.
will be in conflict with national interest.
interest.
We'll put forward the facts.
Of the
You
national
have to put
interest.
it forward to the
They will
court,
exhibit
and
it.
it will not be the court that will determine whether, in truth and in fact, that constitutes a breach of
If
the
you look
national
at
interest.
chapter 2,
You cannot be a judge in your own
fundamental
cause. You cannot decide
Chapter
that
2
this is
on
national
fundamental
interest.
human
rights.
rights. Yeah, this is becoming interesting to me, and I think
And you have
it's just
freedom of expression.
You have freedom of movement. You have
Freedom of movement. Freedom of expression is
No,
under.
no. That's a clear violation.
Article 19.
And then the
I disagree, man.
Okay, while he's still disagreeing, we'll
I
just take a break here. And when we come back, we'll be having, joining us in this discuss, Mrs. Morenike Tejuade Babintina Shai. I'm sure a lot of you will be asking, where is she? Because you are all familiar with
her face.
her voice and her contributions on hot issues as this. So let's just take another quick break. We come back in a minute, and she will also be joining us in this discuss.
No love is all we need.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And like we did say that Mrs. Morenike Tejuade Babintina Shai, the founder president, International Center for Tax Research and Development, will be joining us in this discourse. So let's just say a big welcome and thank you for joining us at this point of the discourse.
Thank you very much, Femi.
And you quickly want to make your contribution so that we can move on.
I was here when the issue of violation was being discussed, I don't think Nigerians should be surprised with various violations by President Buhari. I don't think we should be surprised, because when he assumed office, he wanted the legislators to give him approval to have special rules, special orders. He wanted special orders so that he can rapidly carry out his job. But unfortunately, Nigerians cried aloud, say no, follow the Constitution. The legislators also say follow the Constitution. What I have seen in the attitude of the federal government is that we are beginning to issue decrees in a democratic setting, which is not tolerable, which is not acceptable, and we really have to guide against it. The issue of Executive Order 7, which our SAN has thoroughly trashed, I just want to add that in a system where there is constitutional provision, you see, taxation is legislative power. The executive is just carrying out the law. There is a difference between making a law and executing the law. The position of federal government is to execute law, not to make law. And an executive order cannot be turned into law. It's never done. Now, this issue of Executive Order 7, I have it here, Looking at it, I've gone through it, you find that we don't have the foundation to actually implement this Executive Order 7. It's not in consonance with what we are being made to believe. You see, when the military were going, they made decrees, and they said that those decrees must become Nigerian law. He is giving the president the power that in case there's any decree that they have made and it is not in conformity with the Constitution, he has the power to make it to conform with the Constitution. The military did not ask the president to change the Constitution. The president does not have that power to change the Constitution. But if there is any existing law that will be used after the military has gone and is not in conformity with the Constitution, that is what the Constitution is giving the president the power to ensure that it is in conformity with that with the Constitution. Not making a different law entirely.
No love is all we need.
Hello?
Is that Danger?
Na Danger dey talk. Who be this?
Your boss. You don't recognize my voice?
Recognize your voice, bro. See your voice, they put money for my account. Abeg, Chief Disu. Now you be that? Baba, no vex now. You know say your voice don't step up, as you said don't step up now. Your voice don't change. I want to say I don't get this your number again. Wetin happen?
Forget the voice that changed or the unknown number. I have a job for you.
A job.
Yes, I'll send all the details to you this night. And I don't want what happened the last time to repeat itself.
Aba, sure you remember say we lost Killer for the last outing?
Yes, and so?
And so it means say the walls don't crack with that. So we gonna need new person to fill in for the strategic operation.
What are you saying, Danger? You are talking too much. I don't have time for this.
Okay. You know that your son, the one with the America, wey dey study for Harvard. You know say as him did that place, him get sense well. Now we gonna need make him fill in the new position of Killer.
My son?
No, my father.
My only son? You must be crazy. You are out of your mind.
But I be like say you dey crazy. It is even know that how this thing dey go. It's say we don't know. You forget say we too we get families, abi. Every election you go call me Danger, organize your boys. I get operation, I get outing, I get job for you. We go do the thing for you. If you say we don't know what thing dey happen, abi, you forget say I get MSc, Baba. From now on, if you wan call me for work, you go call me for work wey dey NNPC, OPIC, share. That kind work na I go do now. All those work wey una don reserve for una pikin na we una go dey call am for. You hear me so? Hello, Chief Disu. Abeg, you get red button for your phone. Oya, press am.
No love is all we need.
Thank you for joining us. The Constitution is an interactive TV program organized by the International Center for Tax Research and Development to highlight trending issues in the social, economic, and political realities of our society as it relates to the Constitution. This program has been ongoing for about 9 weeks now, and we already have 8 episodes. The recommendations and the issues that have been raised within these various episodes shall be reviewed again during subsequent episodes, highlighting recommendations and issues in the political segment, in the economic segment, and in the social segment. Also feel free to make your own issues and recommendations as it relates to the Constitution on matters affecting your social life, your political life, and your economic life. Because believe me, this society is all about me, you, the government, and our well-being.
No love is all we need.
Thank you for joining us once again on this episode of The Constitution, of course organized by International Center for Tax Research and Development. My name is Dosuma Agbola Mubarak. To my left is Ajayi Samuel Olamilikon. And to my right, of course, is Adeloju Isaac Oluwatofumi. On this episode, we shall be discussing earlier raised issues and recommendations in previous episodes of the Constitution organized by the ICTRD. Of course, we shall consider the political segment, the economic segment, and the social segment. So the first one we are going to review, of course, being the economic segment, is the topic of the second episode, which was resource control, a case for constitutional review. The first issue raised during this episode was what exactly is the agitation for resource control? The agitations for resource control simply means that individuals should have absolute ownership over natural resources, while governments should receive their tax and allocations rights, correct?
Yeah, very well.
There were some that claim that this means that there should be an increase in the derivative principle in the Constitution, increasing from 30% to various other figures. And there were those that say that a certain share of the oil profits coming in from the oil sector and other mineral resources should be allocated to landowners whereon such mineral resources were found. Do you guys think that covers everything?
Oh, well, yeah, I think, it does, yeah.
So the reason why this topic had to be addressed in the first place was because there is currently a widespread dissatisfaction with how government runs resource allocation and resource control in the Federation. For this reason, there have been various comments and reviews on how we should in fact solve the problem of resource allocation and resource control to ensure a better economic situation for the country and individuals within the country, as well as sate the agitations of landowners wherein these mineral resources were found. Of course, there have also been issues about the fact that Section 45 of the Constitution vests control over mineral resources in the government of the Federation and not the federal government. Did you hear the argument that federal government is not necessarily the same thing as the government of the Federation?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and that's a very ingenious argument. If I was a lawyer, I would actually argue that in court.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we pointed out that certain governors should have made the same arguments, but for some political reasons, this argument have not been made.
Yeah, I don't think it will fly with the level of our judges and judicial advocates in the
I never said such. Okay, so for this reason, having considered the issues, especially regarding the dissatisfaction with the use of mineral resources in the Federation and the fact that the government is not making ample use of a lot of mineral resources, especially since we focus only on the oil sector. I mean, because we have bitumen, we have coal, we have a host of other mineral resources.
So we just have
recently, gold is now a new thing in Nigeria.
Yes. There's a woman crush she wants to focus on that. Regardless, we also made our recommendations on how we can solve the problem of resource control and agitations for better resource control in the Federation. Our first recommendation, of course, was there should be a registry for landowners whereupon these mineral resources were found.
Yeah, I think that registry for the landowners would not only help for resource control, at the same time we also help for keeping records. Because basically you have a lot of houses on the streets, we don't know the owners. So if we have a proper land registry, every land, we know who is buying this land, we know who is selling this land, we know who owns this land. By the time you come to my land and you mine and you get whatever resources and you get revenue from it, it will be easier for me to approach the government and tell them I need compensation.
Precisely. What do you
Well,
think?
in that regard, actually, Lagos State has been doing very well with regards to land registry and stuff. So I just think other states in Nigeria need to look up to Lagos State and catch up in this regard for us to have a compiled and very well reliable registry over land registration matters here.
The matter here is not just the land. It is because, the way we view property in Africa is quite peculiar.
Yeah.
So therefore, having a land registry is going to ensure that if you want to mine mineral resources on this said land, the owners of this land can, have a say in how you allocate their land to other people out there. So because there have been arguments that the way things are currently run in the Federation, it's almost as if we are slaves to the government, just as we were under the colonial masters.
Yes.
Basically, you are very right about that.
The government can
like
just come
whenever
at
the government decides.
Yeah, come at any time,
If
take
you are
over your
unlocking
land
the
out
intent
because
to compensate you, are getting nothing for that.
Precisely. So there have been arguments that the land registry may not work because it's going to require a lot of manpower and a lot of time, which will probably not be available. And to this, we've also made the argument that if we cannot have land registries, we can have some sort of zonal government specifically for resource allocation matters.
Actually, I disagree with you like that we can't even have a land registry. I think with the inputs of blockchain technology, we could have a transparent and properly upgraded, maintained land registry.
Do you agree with that?
In a state like in a country like the United States, you just put in the name, you know who the owner of the house is. You put in the name, you know all his houses all over the state. So I think with blockchain technology and good development, I think we can fix it out.
Yeah.
Regardless, our final recommendation was the fact that if all of these earlier recommendations are unavailable, before Nigeria became the Federal Republic of Nigeria, when we were amalgamated by Lord Lugard, we had community leaders, we had individual nations within the Federation.
Yeah.
So how about we bring up leaders from these individual nations to the round table, to the drawing board, so they can decide on a particular manner of resource control and resource allocation that will be beneficial to everybody in the Federation. At least it's going to solve the agitations and promote economic development for everybody within the Federation.
That's very awesome. And that brings about the point of restructuring. We hear more of that in my own segment.
Oh, Daniel, let's say it now.
Okay, well,
on
restructuring, actually, it is very necessary. Restructuring our political system is one key one that we should actually advocate for. And when I'm talking about election affairs, which affects our political associations as well. So when we have restructuring in place in this line, we have the people coming together to have a say and being the ones who are actually being represented in the government. This is true democracy. But in Nigeria, what we have is miles away from that, commercialized democracy, as my friend Isaac could say. So we want the people to actually have a say for themselves, be people who can send in their representatives who at any point in time they can call upon for accountability and stuff. So that is restructuring we're talking about.
How do you fix in political ideologies with this your argument about people having more say in their political arena?
Well, I think Nigeria has gotten it wrong in that political associations, from what they meant to be, is not what is obtaining in reality.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, we are just playing political money parties or we're playing political money businesses. They're into businesses and not promoting ideologies. The Constitution of Nigeria specifically commanded that political associations are meant to serve as bearers of diverse ideologies. I mean, stand for something. Let your people know this. Go ahead to represent your people and let everybody see this as your hallmark. Times past in Nigeria, talk of the AG and the UPN in those days. Awolowo, you understand? Yeah, till tomorrow everybody reckons free education or to Baba Awolowo because AG then can canvass and campaign solely on free education, and they achieved that. The UPN, on the other hand, had their foci as the economy. But then today we do not have political parties or political associations having such things. Rather, they just go, you understand, talk about who can blow the amount of money to control the crowd and get gifts for the people.
During the political episode, you guys had this very discussion. You mentioned something about, financial returns and something about political parties.
Yes. The Constitution rightly demands that political associations from time to time publish their financial reports. I think in 2015, the then INEC chairman tried his own best to ensure that political parties do that. But with regards to this 2019 elections, which is just weeks away, in fact, less than 2 weeks away, there is nothing like that in the picture.
I think the best form we've had about declaring the amount they've spent on election campaigning is from probably 2 new candidates. Candidates from a new political party, he claimed he had spent over 200 million.
Oh, okay.
A very young man. He had spent over 200 million on his campaign.
Okay.
And one during the anti-corruption campaign said he had received a total donation of about 99 million, and he has just 3 million net in his party account.
I think you guys mentioned something about money politics being a very huge problem to participation of youth in the political arena of Nigeria.
Yeah, very well. That is being talked about by the youth segments in that particular episode that we had in the political arena. We see that youths are actually ready to take over the change that is necessary in the Nigerian political landscape. Yeah. Well, for the fact that Nigerian politics is a charade of money-playing politics, so the youths, in a way, are inhibited and are prevented because these youths hardly have enough funds. In fact, some of them...
I think that's evidence in the level of presidential campaign of all the new candidates.
Exactly.
The new candidates probably have GoFundMe accounts where you have crowdfunding. The crowd is funding you. Yeah. And you have some people that would even know where their money is coming from.
Yeah.
So you won't compare someone who has the crowd funding him. When the crowd doesn't decide not to fund you, you're not getting any campaign.
Yeah.
And I think that the joy of that, having the crowd to fund, is that it makes you accountable to the crowd and not to those that have bought your ticket. Because if you buy my ticket to become the governor and I end up becoming the governor,
of course I owe you.
I owe you.
Yeah.
But now when the crowd funds me, I owe the crowd. I owe the masses.
You owe the people.
Yeah.
Wait. The matter about youths not being able to participate because of money issues. But historically speaking, Nigerians have often been led by youth. If I remember correctly, Yakubu Gowon was 29 or
29
or thereabouts when he was so I think you guys mentioned something about studying history in the social segments. Could you bring us up to date on that?
In the social segment, we had a particular. During the youth segment, we had a particular segment that had to make a case for the reform of the secondary school curriculum, where we have to bring in civic education and history back into the curriculum.
Sure.
And the whole idea is that Nigeria is suffering from a very terrible effect, negative effect of the absence of civic education and history in our education system for a very long time. For instance, the corruption index, the high crime rates, the low level of patriotism and nationality you all know an average Nigerian youth cares about Big Brother Nigeria more than
the election.
So this is as a result of the fact that our history has been distorted. An Igbo man will write his history from the Igbo point of view. An Hausa man will write from his own perspective. A Yoruba man will write, and a job man. Everybody tries to write history to favor or
his own side,
to dance into its own tune.
Nobody's objective.
That's one of our recommendations. One of our recommendations was that we should have a uniform history and civic education syllabus or a standard. So whatever book you are going to be writing for our secondary schools, for our primary schools, and even for our tertiary institutions, whatever books you're going to, they have to meet a uniform standard. So when we are, even despite the fact that these subjects have been reintroduced, we also advocate that it should be taught practically, but not just teaching the subjects practically, but teaching the writing practically. Because you have to understand that the Nigerian history should be the same in Kano, at the same time in Lagos. It should be the same thing in Lagos and Taraba, wherever you are, in the east and the south, it has to be the same thing. That's one of our issues.
Sure, Samuel, I remember you didn't get to mention your recommendations as regard, political associations and funding. And what are your recommendations?
Definitely, I wasn't done. The Constitution actually needs to do more with regards to stipulating, in fact, enforcing, putting in place measures whereby to punish political associations who fail to live up to that role of declaring their financial status. From time to time, we don't know anything about that. Another key fact is political donations that we receive from international bodies and countries alike. Even the INEC, according the Constitution, actually empowers the INEC to receive funds from this country. But the big question is, to what end or what is the motive or interest behind this funding?
I think it's actually the fact that the drafters of the Constitution didn't pay cognizance to the politics and the economics of campaign financing. Because a foreign country that decides to fund election in your own country,
They must have ulterior motives.
at the end of the success or the failure of that election, they have to dictate the tone of the government. Because I funded the election that brought you into power. Come on, you have to.
You will pay the piper.
Yeah.
Dictates the tune.
You have to do the
However, I don't want to think the drafters of the Constitution were daft when they drafted the Constitution. To an end, they had it. I find there might be a need for political. The election, it consumes a lot of money to run, especially in a very large country like Nigeria.
Okay.
Hence, welcoming of such funds. Do you understand?
Okay.
But then the interest is what is actually being questioned, and eventually we see that the bottom line is these guys just want to have a way to penetrate into our economy and have the control.
I think I agree with you. The fact that the Constitution provides for such opportunity doesn't mean we have to make use of it. But really the fact that we have to, independence of a country and the sovereignty of a country is somewhat tied to the economic independence and economic sovereignty of that country. A country can be fully independent if you depend on another country to fund your election. So I think is...
Speaking of the economy, one other topic we had in the economic sector was the role of the RMAFC, that is Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Fiscal Commission, in achieving the rights contained in Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Chapter 2 contains socio-economic rights, fundamental objectives, and all of this stuff.
Non-justiciable.
Non-justiciable in Section 660.
And, yeah. In one of the episodes, Mrs. Morekin Ngebandibi International actually pushed for a call for Nigerians to challenge that Section 6C of the Constitution.
Actually, I think it's a right to do call.
It is actually, it is, I think, according, in our own words, it is alien to democracy and it is an ingredient of dictatorship. When the people, when you've highlighted all these rights, and then eventually you spoil it up by saying the people have no rights to call for action.
Meaning, you have this right, but if I decide not to do it, there's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it.
I think that's
so
actually taken care of because Nigeria has ratified the African Charter.
No, that's the sad part about the African Charter. African Charter tells you progressive realization. The principle of progressive realization means that when the government feels that they can build house for you, they will build house for you. So at this point, the Nigerian government, they don't feel like doing anything. I'm sorry to say. They don't feel like developing the youth. They don't feel like building schools. We have about over 10 million out of school kids. That's like another issue about even something we discussed on the social segment. So we have a lot of responsibilities on the government, and the government, obviously at this point, they are not interested in doing it. So I think the call to get rid of that section is very, very, like, this is the right time.
And I think, well, although it's the right time, but then measures in place actually to effect that.
I think we have to understand the fact that there's a trigger effect. When we create the need to do it, you can give them an implementation period. True. For instance, if you actually realize the fact that Nigeria has a very, I think 17 million, if I shouldn't be quoted because I'm not sure of the figures, but 17 million housing deficits. That means practically every Nigerian should be on the streets. And if you know the cost of housing in Lagos State, you understand. And we have a right to shelter and according to that section. Yes. So if the government actually understands that it is very imperative, like it's very urgent for them to actually do something about it. By the time we actually have our right to housing being protected by the court by removing that particular section, we then give the government an implementation period. And that kind of initiative allows the government to be innovative. Because for instance, in China, when they have ghost apartments in China is the most populated country in the world, and they have ghost apartments, meaning they have houses nobody's living in. Because and look at Nigeria, we have the land. Well, we have basically everything.
Before you just come and steal my shine, I still have to discuss the RMAFC in relation to achieving socio-economic rights in Chapter 2. Now, basically, the RMAFC is supposed to regulate and monitor money going to the federation account. It's also supposed to, review our allocation formula to ensure that it keeps pace with emerging issues. However, there are certain issues with the RMAFC. The first one is, as of 2014, when it reviewed the revenue allocation formula, it complained bitterly that the federal government refused to give it audience. The same with other parastatals. It's like a toothless bulldog.
Yeah.
As if that is not bad enough. Currently, we have just 7 commissioners out of, we're supposed to have 37, I think. We have just 7. So this means that these guys cannot even function because they require a quorum, which is 13 commissioners before they can properly function. So even if they want to function right now, they cannot function.
So basically, the government as an agency
that is redundant.
That they established to be redundant.
Precisely. Because these commissioners are not available, and even the ones that are available are complaining of inadequate funding. They are complaining of not getting attention. So therefore, the commission is, for all intent and purposes, non-functional. It functions official.
And this actually also comes with our call for the removal or the destruction of that terrible section 6. Because if we actually get rid of that section and you bring this sort of committee into place, this committee is meant to tell us at what point the government can actually afford, under the principle of progressive realization, when they can actually afford to build houses for us, when they can actually afford to give us the free. Because truth be told, we just hear about billions of billions being seized, billions of billions being embezzled, billions of billions. We don't. If you try to bring up all those billions together, I'm sure they will take care of our right to education, our right to health, our right to shelter.
I agree with you. You must all understand that the RMEFC has a duty to ensure that there's sustainable development in our economic arena. So perhaps the reason we have all of these economic issues such as recession and money not being properly accounted for is because of the inadequacies inherent in the current RMEFC. And for these reasons, we actually made certain recommendations on what the government should do. Of course, naturally, the first thing you need to do is to make sure the commission is actually properly constituted. So the needed commissioners should be appointed by the federal government.
That's very important.
And secondly, there's a matter of funding. I mean, money makes the world go round. So adequate funding should be provided to these guys. So when they have funding, when they have proper commissioners, then the next thing, of course, is giving them attention.
Yeah, you give them attention, and we hope for the right political will. Because in every activity, sort of every government agency, depends on political will. I'll give an example. The tax system recently. The political will of the government, coupled with the fact that we have to make money due to recession, has driven the tax agency or the tax authorities to actually make more money for the government. So I think other than that, we have to back them up with the requisite political will.
Speaking of political will, I believe you guys had a session on whether or not Nigerian youths have the will and the ability to, in fact, be the change we need in our political sector.
Well, that is a whole lot on its own. There has been a debate over time, and it is not more of a yes or no question. Because the truth is, Nigerian youths are actually ready. Looking at what youths are doing all around the world, I mean, looking at the giant strides that these youths have been taking, we believe that Nigerian youths look at the Not Too Young to Run bill, which was passed on the 30th of May 2018. Started just like a child play on Twitter, and eventually passed by the National Assembly, eventually accepted upon by the president. That shows that the youth are actually ready for a change when they want to be ready. But
but what is stopping us from having a very pivotal and visible role in our current political
There are many
arena?
challenges, just as it was highlighted earlier. The big money politics that is being played in Nigeria. Look at these youths. Look at the least position you can contest for in Nigeria, the councillorship position. I can tell you authoritatively, if you don't have millions of naira to spend, you cannot campaign.
It depends on if you want to go to a very small political party. I know one of these political parties that just came in, and for students, you could actually contest free of charge. You can see me after the program. I'll tell you the party.
It's possible, yeah, but of course nobody can.
If you are an average person, I think you have to pay about 20,000. I was surprised because you're a young political party, you need money, but then you are still doing this. So I just felt probably they tried to open the door to get the young people to
participation.
Well, we all know that in Nigeria, to win the hearts of the people, you have to be out there. You spend money on publicity, you spend money on the crowd you're garnering, and all sorts. So the youths do not have the financial capacity for stuff. Do you understand? Yeah. So when that big money politics stuff can be taken care of, and I think restructuring in a way can actually answer this. When we have restructuring and we actually see that democracy is truly given to the people at the grassroots, the people can come and a community can present a representative.
But the people are hungry. That's the problem. So I think the whole idea of restructuring should also come with proper economic empowerment, so that when the people are actually well fed, then they can think. A man that is not hungry is thinking with his belly and not with his brain.
Okay, so just make your recommendations because our time is almost finished.
All right, so on the recommendation, we regards to that, there should be the promotion of independent candidacy. We should have community being able to present their own representatives. So this time, it is the community that is funding or financially supporting that candidate. And he only owes them responsibility. Represent them well, give them good governance, and be accountable to them. Unlike when your friends and family are those making political donations to you, and then when you get there for the first 1 or 2 years.
That's
All
what
you're
we want
thinking is emptying the treasury in order
their
to give
purpose.
back. And then there's one godfather somewhere, reminding you, young boy, without me, you wouldn't be there. You understand? So you have to pay back your dues. So when all of these issues are being taken care of, I believe that we can start off and gradually the whole change we've been seeking can be reflective. Yeah.
Wonderful. So these are some of the issues we have raised during the constitution organized by the ICTRD, and you've heard our recommendations, you've seen how we highlighted the issues, and we hope that with these few views of ours and our recommendations, things can actually get better and things can be addressed both within our constitution, within our mindsets, and within our society. Thank you for joining us.
No love is all we need. We are